My name is Marcia Robinson, and we are recording an oral history with Linda Stevenson Watkins as part of the Sweet MUMories Oral History Project. This project marks the 50th anniversary of the Miami University Middletown, Ohio campus. This interview is taking place on November 11, 2016 at the Gardner Harvey Library. Mrs. Watkins, do I have your permission to begin this recording?
You do have my permission to begin this recording.
Well, thank you. Can you tell us about how you came to join the Miami University Middletown campus family?
Okay. I worked as a college counselor in Michigan. And this is long before the internet, but a friend told me that there was a job opening posting at the Middletown campus and they needed a counselor, so I was the first counselor on this campus. And that was about 77.
And when you arrived at campus, what kinds of needs did you see that our students had for counseling?
When I first came to campus, it was summertime, so people were coming, making inquiries about classes, and I helped them select some classes, so you could say I was an academic counselor at that point in time. And then it came to the fall, and everybody was supposed to register on the very same day. A little bit of chaos, I'd say. Not intentional, of course, but then we evolved, when June came aboard, we evolved into more summertime orientation registration for classes. So that's how it began. Okay. And I was given an office shared with Lynn Derbyshire, and I was there as the counselor. Well, you can imagine that, putting a name on the door doesn't necessarily bring people in. So I think the beauty of working on this campus is that I had a lot of freedom of movement or freedom to initiate programs or activities. Example being Mums Tots, when I kept seeing a stream of women coming through who needed to get their lives together and their economic stability was important to them. And they had little children on top of that. So anybody can imagine all the responsibilities of juggling that. So there was a space to be used, and with a kitchen behind the library there, the Verity. And so we looked at that. We obtained some money to get some cots, because kids need to take little naps, and we did some trade-off, moms sign up for certain hours in exchange for having their children watch. So you could say it was maybe like a babysitting co-op, if you will. And then eventually we got a person to take on the responsibilities of that endeavor. And then the state at that point in time started to identify and certify or license daycare centers. It wasn't really called a preschool, daycare centers. So our director of that, Colleen Wainwright, she took care of meeting all of those requirements, and that's how it started and survived and did well. And it was really salvation to many women coming back to school.
Some of our students who have given us stories credit this program not only with the ability to attend class, but also to make friends. What did you observe about that?
Mutual support, of course. Yeah, of course. It's just a pretty hard endeavor to go to school, take care of your kids, study. So they made friends with each other, and because I spent a little bit of time up there too, I became also the go-to person, if you will. I think there's a picture in the archives of me with my little daughter at one point. Not that I used it that year. I had to stay home with her, but I stopped in to see how things were going. So There is a picture in your archives of me with my little daughter, Sarah, who eventually came here to school for a semester before she went over to Oxford. So on the long term, you could say we had some family history here. And talk about family, I think there was a very tight and warm relationships under Dr. Bennett. He really made sure that people felt welcome. There were cooperative dinners, throughout the year, and that we were all on the same page. I think that was really important, and I think it was nice to feel supported and have somebody believe in your experiences and what you could do and the potential that you could bring to campus. That was nice.
The 1970s were a transformative time in the country. I mean, we also had the idea of feminism rolling through campus, and Chaos has quite a few articles about it.
Slowly, though. I came from Michigan.
Okay.
And so where I would hear a stronger tone about feminism there, I came down here, and that was not exactly, what should we say? I guess maybe I worked with women offenders before coming down here. And before that, I was at Michigan State getting a degree, was in a doctoral program. So when I came down here, people didn't embrace that big time. Maybe it was because it was a big city. Armco and the auxiliary companies were here very much providing jobs for men, and women were the stay-at-home moms, of course. So when women realized that, this marriage isn't perfect, or I have to be able to provide for myself, or I've never explored my own talents, which many women came back age 35 or 40 or 50 and said, I want to be a nurse. Wow, that was really good for them, It was really very much an open door for them to explore their talents.
So this feminism was not about going out and marching, not here?
Oh, no, it wasn't militant. No.
Oh, okay. You've spoken about the students who are coming back of different ages.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that there's another organization to help that group have friendships. It was called Rusty Nails.
Yeah, we had a group of older students, and we called them Rusty Nails.
Do you know where the name came from?
I guess it's aging. I don't remember. Rusty Nails. Let's see. Why did we call it Rusty Nails? Sharp as a tack. That's the flip side of it. And we're sharp as a tack. We're not Rusty Nails. So yeah, we again, that was a way to get people of like age and aspirations together. Yeah. So that was
What
good.
kinds of things did they do?
I don't think we had maybe some carry-in lunches. As far as doing things on the outside of the university, not much that I can recollect. But as far as other ways that I help students see outside their immediate situation is I started service learning. So we went down to the dream house, I guess you might say. The lady who lived in the south part of town and had aspirations of feeding people, and so I would take students down there. There were some churches that helped too, but I took my own kids and I took students from here. And we all worked on habitat projects too. Eventually that turned into a 1-hour class of service learning. So I was glad to have done that. I think that's an important part of one's education. Value-driven, if you will, but I think that's important to be part of the community and contribute. So, and I took students to Michigan. That was an experience for me, an experience for them too. We drive the van, and you learn a lot about each other in the van. You sleep on the pews in the local church, and you work on in a completely different geography than what you're used to. The winter time is what I'm trying to tell you. too. But I think the questions that students asked about who we were helping and for what reason and how far this would benefit, and if we weren't being too invasive, I think questions were important. And it was good to have a mobile classroom, if you will. Yeah, so that was good.
When did this begin? About what decade did you start the service learning?
80s,
Okay.
maybe late 80s.
We still do that, so
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. What was it like to share an office with Lynn Derbyshire?
No, he had one on one side and I on the other. And then when June came aboard, they made a pod for us downstairs on the lower level so that we could be multi-services to students. So everything from placement with Kim Ernstine, June taking on the responsibilities of organizing academic advising, me with personal counseling, career counseling too.
With the counseling services, how did students pay for that time?
They don't pay. It's free.
Is there a limit to how many sessions they could
No.
have? Wonderful. And
That made it unusual.
was it transformative for some students without naming names or specifics? Could you see the difference that you were making?
I would never call myself a hero, anything like that. But in a community college setting, I think you're sort of a linchpin for helping people find other resources or matchups, friendships oftentimes, or through student organizations. Trips, or Mum's Tots, Rusty Nails, that you're making the connection for people. And many, many times I've spent calling on the phone to find out where to get X, and X, I can tell you a really good example of X, because I was also in charge of disability services. A woman came here, and in order for her to stay all day, she's a wheelchair user, for her to stay all day, she had to make some changes. And to have a privacy to make those changes was pretty important. So to find equipment for her to use that privacy on campus, I made some phone calls and got some equipment. So I was pretty happy to do that for her. And she finished her degree.
Did that kind of service become more formalized over the years?
Become more formal? I don't.
Working with disability services.
I don't know how to answer that question.
When you started offering disability services, you were our first counselor, and now we have an office suite that's set up for counseling and disability services.
Okay.
Did you participate in that transition from a desk to a suite of offices? How the program grew?
I had one desk.
Okay.
One desk and multi-hats. But it was at a point when universities were recognizing that they had students with disabilities or students with limitations they could do so much better. For example, if they had a Kurzweil reader or they had something that would enlarge print. Now we don't think anything of it because we have the computer that takes care of some of that. For students that maybe have ADHD or they need more time on a test because they have MS or something on that order, my office was a space where they could take a test. So many times students were, offered a private space, quiet space, because they needed more time to take a test. How difficult is that? You give them an hour and a half. They take it in an hour and a half instead of the 50 minutes in class.
And what was it like to arrange?
Can I pause you before that question real quick? Would you mind turning a little bit more toward Marsha? I'm starting to see the microphone pack on your back
Oh,
as you turn a little bit
I
further.
want to be properly represented here.
Thank you. All right.
May I resume the recording?
Sure.
So you speak about creating spaces for students who may have ADHD. How did you work with faculty to make those arrangements?
You just go up to their office and say, you know, I have a student that will need fill in the blank or will need to sit in the front row because, as you know, students come in and they plant themselves for the semester and that looks like their chair. Well, if a student needed to be up in the front so that they could read lips, you know, we want to make sure that they know they have a space there. You know, it's easy to work here. You know, I don't think it's like a bigger university where the message has to be sent way across campus and you don't know what the classroom looks like. Easily taken care of here. So.
Okay. One of the things that has been said about you is you really helped us to accommodate a diverse group of students. Are there different groups of students who were served here that you'd like to talk about in terms of population characteristics? Did you work with veterans?
International students?
Tell us about those.
I was a Peace Corps volunteer in another life, okay? So I have a sensibility of global aspects, maybe. You know, what's it like to cross the threshold into another culture? And so there were students from other countries here. You know, I'm going to be hard pressed to remember I don't want to say names, but some of the countries. Myanmar was one, you know, Burma, Myanmar. So to reach out a little bit more for those students. Let me think of another. Palestine. So I had asked them to bring their flags, or I would tell me their country, and I would buy a flag, which I did. And so I started putting them in the commons there. I don't know if they're still there or not.
We have dozens of flags now.
All right, well, I
Thank
started
you.
that project then. Okay, and so, you know, that gives people a sense of place, that they're welcome here, that they're recognized. So that's important.
Another thing I'd like to know about, did some of the older students, were they nervous about being in a classroom? Some of them when they first came?
Well, I'm married to one of those older students. Talk about veterans. Okay, when I first came here, I came with everything I owned. A horse, a trailer, horse and the trailer, all my personal belongings, including my mattress and my red truck. So my goal was to find a barn, and I needed a saddle rack. So luckily there were classes taught in the evening, you know, so I could stay after, and I made a saddle rack. Well, then my husband, who is a veteran, he'd been in submarine service, came into that class periodically because he was studying to be an industrial arts teacher. So you see, a lot of my roots are here. And was he nervous about coming back to school? He loved it. He loved talking to all these young kids. Is his English and spelling great? No. Does he read tons? A lot. That's what you do in a submarine, I think. After you finish joking and being serious too, and being quiet, you read a lot. So, but he's always very nervous about his spelling. So now we have spell checkers, you know. But back then, you know, there's a certain intimidation about the classroom that I think older students might have felt, veterans too. So anyway, the end of my story is that's how I my husband and I got together.
One of the other issues that we need to talk about is the concept of changing people's perspectives. How do you do that?
Changing their perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what counseling's all about, too? Many ways, you know, seeing the picture, the glass is half full instead of half empty. Taking them downtown to, even if it's Middletown, to work on a habitat project. To work at Luella Thompson's dream house and feed the multitudes and see that there's greater community here. Hopefully that's how you get people pried out of their small world.
Okay. So what happened to the horse?
The horse died and I had another when we moved to a farm.
Okay.
And I taught my kids how to ride. And I just spent one whole lovely afternoon riding 5 miles at Caesars Creek yesterday.
Marvelous. Where did you serve in the Peace Corps?
Côte d'Ivoire
Okay.
and Togo.
So you speak French?
Oui.
Oui. Did you ever use that to help students understand that foreign language would be useful someday? Did that conversation ever come up with some students?
That's a hard one. That's a harder one, you know, and some of them had to take it for their bachelor's degree. Sometimes I went into Mark Plegeman. Did you interview him? Mark Plegeman's class, and he recreated his class so there would be one class of practice. So I volunteered and went in there like once a week to speak French. I had good relations with, there was a faculty member here that came and taught international music, and so when he needed to be absent, I went in and had some fun with the students. A little balafone, you know, that was fun.
So it sounds like working here was never about
Being
doing
at
one function.
No, it was not about one, for me, it was not about one function, and it wasn't sitting behind a desk, because you cannot be a counselor sitting behind a desk in my opinion, at a community college such as this. Maybe you can at Sinclair, where people take numbers, but I find it much more effective to be out with individuals, or allow the serendipity to happen, I guess you might say.
Are there any programs from your time of counseling that you hope that we are continuing to do and will continue to do for the next 50 years?
Programs from counseling. Well, probably has more to do with service learning than anything. Again, that students recognize that there's a value, and it's not just my value, but the value of giving to your community. After I left, I did a lot of 10 years of work with American Red Cross, going to fires, but I went to 7 national disasters as a counselor, counselor supervisor, and that gives you a different perspective too. And so I think we're all in this together, right? So I think that if students left here with more community views, and I'm sure they do, that's what education does. Travel does, it opens the doors. Is it Mark Twain that said you can't remain prejudiced after you've traveled, something like that?
So you started here in 1977. Have you seen a change in what our students' needs are over the years? in terms of career development or economic awareness?
Okay, when I first came to campus, I learned about Middletown and the embracing arms of Armco and the lucrative hourly salary there. For even a student could get a job in the mailroom at $8 an hour, when at the time, I think minimum wage must have been $4 or $5 an hour. So there was always this promise that you could graduate from high school, do well at Armco, hope to be a crane operator and make very good money, provide for your family. And when I had students in my classroom, I think maybe they were often teetering on, is it something to go to Armco or I get my education? And I can distinctly remember one girl having a mailroom job part-time at $8 an hour. And, but I would try to take it further than that. If you made $8 an hour, you would make $9 an hour, you would make about $18,000 a year, okay? Have we come that far? Not really. And of course, those jobs of Armco are more tenuous. They've been cut back. The auxiliary companies have been cut back too. I think that maybe tells you why many students are going to the allied health services, because they know there is a job that's really good paying job after that. When people ask me about, I really like history though, or I like communication, you have to be a little more creative and be willing to move. I was certainly willing to move down for a job. I think for our population here in Middletown, family is very important. Those connections with family are pretty important. So the idea of moving to Columbus for a job where you work in a museum, for example, would be really hard to imagine, really hard to make that transition. So do I think that's changed? I'm not sure that kind of change attitudinal change has been made. When I first came here, there have a lot of people that came up from Kentucky, and they found jobs at General Motors, Armco, and they did very well. They also went back on the weekends, if you don't know that. They would talk about how tight the bridge was and how much traffic there was at the bridge. So you have a population that migrated up here for jobs. They're passing on that value to their children about, go get a college education. And, here's Middletown campus sitting right in the middle of it all, an opportunity. Those group of students between the 70s and 80s, I think maybe they came to school, but maybe they were still weighing, do I have to stay in school? Should I stay in school if I get a degree? Will I need to move? I think those were all big questions. How will I fare at Oxford, which is a little bit different kind of profile over there, So that's my commentary on career development and staying in school. But I would take it right down to some basics about if you made your $8 an hour and you made your $18,000 a year, even though you're living at mom's house right now, how far is that going to take you? Let's expand your earning potential by going to school. And then we break it right down. How much do you need to, pay for an apartment? You have a car payment. How many times are you going to get your hair cut? Now it's how many times are you going to get your nails painted too. But what if you needed a new tire on your car? So I had hoped to put some of those realities in there. The book I told you about, Nickel and Dimed, was one of the reality testers, and I had students report on that. So I think there's some good books out there about, economics, and there are even more now in 2016, about making sure you save some of that orange money, right? Okay.
So as I'm listening to the story of your time here, what I find is a person who helps students make the connections between the classes and life and getting their life ready
I
for
hope
getting
so.
to class. Would you say that that's might be what you worked on here?
Well, I would hope so, yes.
Yeah.
And many people had their students, whether they're 18 or 25, had their foot in both venues, university aspirations, and then the realities of help paying mom back for her loan on their car. It wasn't cushy. It wasn't preppy. It was students had to face a reality. They did.
What is it like then on graduation day? Did you ever attend graduations where students told you what it meant to be graduating?
Well, graduation at the time that I was here was all in Oxford.
Okay.
So did I celebrate with students? Sometimes. Took them out for lunch, or we had them over to my house for dinner. Especially I can remember international students because it was a big deal. Or had an event up at Verity because a student from West Africa was graduating. And so, and I made them, I can't even think of what it's called, the banner that goes around your graduation.
Regalia or the hood?
A hood, and the colors of their flag. I made a couple of those too, because I think it was important that, I felt like their family here. We didn't have the internet then. So it was pretty important to celebrate that.
Is there anything else you'd like to put into the record for future scholars reading this interview or watching this interview? What else do you want people to remember about the first 50 years of MUM?
Well, it was transformational for supporting women coming back to school, women in the workplace, giving people a chance to succeed in spite of their disabilities. And truly, I try to be a good learner, but the technology of the Kurzweiler and finding interpreters and someone, for someone who's hearing disabled, there's a difference between an interpreter and someone who can do it literally, So I think many of those things have been solved or resolved now to make it easier for students. Am I right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it is much easier.
I think education's coming along, yeah.
Do I have your permission to discontinue the recording?
You have my permission to discontinue the recording.
Thank you.